The past year hasn't been great for new releases in video games for me. The two games I was looking forward to the most were Cyberpunk 2077 and Resident Evil 8. Or Village, whatever you want to call it. In playing these two games, I realized they both suffer from a similar issue for me. No, Resident Evil doesn't randomly have genitals glitching out, though if it was Lady D, I don't think anyone would mind.
Let's see how special you are.
Now, the issue I have is the overreaching scope of these two games. They're too ambitious, and I think some of it falls flat because of this. Now, why do I say this for Resident Evil Village? Well, the way I see it, Resident Evil Village is like the love child of Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 7. It takes the gameplay of Resident Evil 4 and uses the presentation of 7. And I know I'm going to be saying something that most people think is blasphemy, but I don't love Resident Evil 4. Don't get me wrong, it's fun and a wild ride, but really for me, this is where the franchise lost its way. It became too focused on action and less on the horror. Resident Evil 4 led to Resident Evil 5.
Wait!
6,
First things first.
leaning more and more into action. They'd basically forgotten all about the horror. In a survival horror game. Then Capcom course corrected with RE7 and the amazing RE2 remake and the short and sweet RE3 remake. I really felt the lesson had been aptly learned. But even so, Capcom again has decided to jump away from these roots. Do you guys even want to make horror games anymore? The thing is, change Ethan's name and you could pass this off as a completely new IP. It just doesn't feel like a Resident Evil game to me, and I think I've figured out why. Below is a list of Resident Evil games that I think are exceptional, and the ones that I don't really care for. No, I didn't say I don't like them. Even most of the RE games that I don't care for, I still think are good. These are in no particular order either. Also, note that these rankings are just my opinion, and if you particularly liked one of the ones on the right, that's totally cool. Going through this list, I've realized there's one thing in common with all the games on the left that none of the games on the right really have, and that's a strict emphasis on item management. In fact, other than Outbreak, all of the games on the left have an item box as an integral part of the gameplay design. Who knew the most important character in Resident Evil wasn't Jill Valentine or Leon Kennedy, but the item box? Put it in Smash, Sakurai! And the more I think about it, the more I can firmly state this is the major difference between my initial playthroughs of Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 8. At many points in Resident Evil 7, in my first playthrough, I would find myself wondering, do I have the right loadout for the next section? Do I need these key items, or should I leave room for healing items and weapons? This never came up in Resident Evil 8. I always felt over-prepared and safe. Keys no longer take up inventory space, and the ammo was always overflowing thanks to the crafting mechanic and the enemy propriety for dropping items when you kill them, incentivizing the player to do so. A mechanic I've always found antithetical to the overall idea of dread through the gameplay loop that the classic RE games had created over the years. There's also a significant amount of enemies who drop lore-inspired treasures, so if you really want to immerse yourself in the story, you need to take the time to kill everything, which eliminates the immersion through gameplay. While we're on the topic of story and immersion, this is the next part of the game that really didn't work for me. The game's plotline has gotten too ridiculous. And beware minor spoilers for this part of the review. I won't go into plot points per se, but the overall presentation. Still, spoilers ahead. Ethan spends the game looking for his daughter. An addition I actually really liked, because it gave us anything to know about Ethan, but at the end of the day, he's still a blank slate beyond Harrison Ford, action hero.
I want my family back.
Okay.
Give me back my family.
Get off me!
I want my family back.
The opening scene has a nice flow to it. It starts with this creepy storybook montage. It feels kind of like a Coraline sequel. Note, if they made a Coraline sequel game, I would play it. But then again, the game ruins this nice quiet moment with machine guns, look out! It's intense and startling, but not scary. And moreover, I kept asking myself, how are none of these shots hitting Ethan? The entire room is being completely decimated by shots, and we later find out that they were specifically trying to save Ethan from Mia, and this is how they do it? And this does not stop. I keep asking myself, why isn't Ethan dead? And no, splashing a first aid bottle on every wound doesn't fix this issue for me. The first aid sprays were always supposed to be a gameplay mechanic, not a plot point in the story, and there's something to be said for the gameplay rules being consistent within cutscenes, but still. The first aid sprays were always supposed to be a get good scrub item. In fact, the older games penalized you for using them by locking you out of the best ranking when you use them. But here, Ethan's just healing from insane wounds just by splashing some alcohol on them. And yes, I know there's another justification within the game towards the end, it doesn't make it not dumb. Another thing I can't really wrap my head around is the conveyance of this game, especially at the start. The game does a really piss-poor job of instructing you on where to go. My first playthrough, I often found myself utterly perplexed on where to go or what to do in the earlier parts of the game. Take, for example, after you find a weapon and you have to defend yourself against an enclave of invading lichens. Another thing I don't really care for in this game. We're doing werewolves now? But after you beat them, a radio comes on and a woman says if there are any survivors, to meet them at her house. The one by the field. There's just one problem. There's no way of knowing where the fields are at this point. You don't have a map, and you haven't seen the fields yet. So how are you supposed to know where to go? To make matters worse, when you leave the house, you're swarmed by an enclave of spawning lichens. This started out pretty intense, but quickly became frustrating for me. And after you reach a specific spot, or a certain amount of time has passed, I'm not even sure what actually triggers this scene. They just leave you alone. Who knows why?
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
Once I finished the game, I went back and played this part again to see if maybe I missed something obvious. And unless I missed it again, it's not there. You just run around until you find it. Yes. This is bad game design. Another bit of questionable game design is the proclivity for invincible stalker type characters in this game. Every Resident Evil game has to have its own nemesis now, which is fine. But RE8 doesn't have 1, 2, or even 3. RE8 has 7! After a while, I'm just like,
that's too much, man!
Another thing I don't like is the way that they were implemented. In previous games, the stalker would be introduced later on, adding another level of complexity to an environment you're starting to get familiar with. This creates a new challenge. I know where to go, but how do I get there now? The best example I can think of this is Mr. X from the Resident Evil 2 remake. When he shows up, you've been in the police station for a little while now. You've got a general idea of where everything is. But now, you have to find a way to get there around him. This is the perfect evolution of risk versus reward. In RE8, this usually is not the case. The pursuers are introduced immediately. You don't have an overall knowledge of where you're going or what to do in the general layout of the environment. I'm looking at you, Lady D, camping outside the save room. I see you. One thing that really bothers me is the sound design as well. While the atmospheric use of sound is great, the monsters leave a lot to be desired. Also, I can't be the only one who is really distracted by the fact that they used the same voice actor for Chris in this game as they did for Carlos in the RE3 remake. This probably wouldn't have been as noticeable if that was the last game in the franchise to be released. Every time I hear him in RE8, I hear Carlos. He didn't even change his performance. Not to say that the performance is bad, mind you, it's just the same.
Sorry, Ethan. What's wrong with Umbrella?
Why not just make this character Carlos, I kept thinking to myself. Sure, Chris is in RE7, but he's unrecognizable from that version now anyway. The voice actor that did Heisenberg in this game was also the voice actor who did Nikolai in the RE3 remake. So maybe I'm thinking they recorded a lot of this stuff at the same time? But at least with Nikolai, he did a significantly different dialect for this game, which helped differentiate the performances immensely.
Lycans and gentlemen! Oh no, don't care. My client ordered me to reduce umbrella to rubber.
But this isn't to say RE8 is a bad game. It's not. First of all, the game is gorgeous. The environments are expansive and breathtaking, and I'm still playing on PS4. I can't imagine how much better it looks on the platform it was designed for. And there are sections of this game that I absolutely love. The dollhouse level is perfect, and I really adore the factory level being run by Heisenberg.
Now, say my name. Heisenberg.
These levels really understand what you need to do to build a sense of tension. The dollhouse level strips you of all your weapons. Somehow. I'm still not really sure how. Ethan even says, "Where are my weapons?" And then they're just back at the end. While this level does also have an invincible pursuer type enemy, one that's super chilling both visually and auditorily, it actually is introduced after you've solved a series of puzzles on the stage, making it more akin to the example I gave of Mr. X in RE2. I also really like the boss fights in this game, though I do think the factory level has too many of them. I think if this game had been structured a little differently, I would not have had the problems I did with it at all. After I got past the opening castle,
And screw this castle.
I really found myself liking the game a lot. But the batshit storyline really kept taking me out of it. The overemphasis on player empowerment and the removal of the inventory management system makes the game just not for me. I'll continue to play it, and it may come around like Resident Evil 4 eventually did for me. And maybe I can enjoy this game for what it is and not what I want it to be. But at the end of the day, the game just feels like a Resident Evil game in name only. And I don't really like that. But it did get me thinking about it so much that I did write a 2,000-word essay breaking down what I do and don't like about it. Right now, I give this a solid C+. This will probably go up after I play it on the new harder difficulty that I've unlocked, because I'm assuming ammo will be much more sparse and the enemies will be that much more intimidating because of it, but we shall see. Hey guys, thanks for checking out my review of Resident Evil Village. If you liked this video, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what you thought in the comments too. Did you love RE Village? You think I'm an old man yelling at clouds because things are different now? I'm all for discourse in the comments, so please keep it civil. Also, if you want to see more video essays from me, please check out my other videos. I have multiple on the Resident Evil franchise, and I also have other games that I think are just spectacular. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.